Good afternoon, good evening, and just maybe good morning for any early risers we have from across the globe tuning in. This is Kiran Shaiva, the convener of Rise World Summit, welcoming you to the second day of the Rise World Summit programming, because I hope on the first day you caught our opening plenary, and if you did not, then please make it a point to do so. We had the most wonderful opening plenary with the release of the Rise World Summit, Rise Values, Rise Values, and then of course the Koru Toolkit. Yeah. Right now, we are starting on the thematic day of the SDGs. As you know, Sustainable Development Goals, something that each and every person, individual or institution, has got to be worried about. And we are going to be talking about that much more in deeper for India, especially localizing SDGs, right? The opportunities and the priorities. I hope that you are ready to get us started. And we are going to look at how these wonderful panelists of mine and wonderful thought leaders and speakers are going to share with us more about what they are doing and how we are going to go ahead. But first, I am going to invite Isabel Tishan, the resident representative of UNDP. I'm not sure what's happening with me today. I think I'm just too excited about the Rise World Summit, isn't it? And the session itself. But Isabel, please do let us know how you are thinking about localizing the SDGs right here in India. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, participants and fellow panelists, or good morning, as Karen just said. I'm very honored to be here at this important roundtable on localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. First of all, Karen, my compliments to you and the whole RISE team for bringing together such a diverse group. And in terms of diversity, I think everybody has noticed that this is an all-women panel. I would like to say I'm happy. It's very unusual that we have all men, or all men we don't have anymore anyway, but it's also very unusual to have an all-women panel. But I think it is from time to time, it is good to have an all-women panel, and I'm happy to be an all-women panel today. I hope, obviously, in the interactions that it's not only women, there will also be men in the interactions. Since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda in 2015, the world, we all know, has faced significant challenges. I mean, the pandemic, of course, the conflicts, the climate change. The SDGs, as a consensus-driven agenda of 193 countries, these offer a powerful framework for development. And I think we are happy that we really, the leaders of this world came together in the years 13-14 to have this agenda. The G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration emphasized even the acceleration and the accelerating progress on the 17th goals of this, on the 17th goal of this agenda. At the heart of India's SDG journey has been its SDG localization efforts, now widely known as the Indian model of the SDG localization. And I think it is fair to say that this is an excellent model, and I've not seen any other country. And as you know, UNDP is working all over the world and supporting the governments on SDG acceleration. And I think this is a unique and very strong model, which is also, I'm sure, interesting to be adapted in a contextualized manner in other contexts. NITI Aayog, through the SDG India Index and the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, through the National Indicator Framework, provided the much needed early impetus to governments at state level. We at UNDP, we are proud to support this journey in supporting the establishment of the so-called SDG coordination centers in various states. which are embedded in the planning commissions at the various states in India. And it is our honor to have Ms. Samdar, the former advisor of SDGs at the NITI Aayog, to join us today. And we obviously look forward, I especially look forward to hearing from her how this has all been set in place, and this is playing out in terms of acceleration of SDGs at the state level. With the Ministry of Development of the Northeastern region, the NER, and NITI Aayog, UNDP developed the Northeastern Region District SDG Index for the 120 plus districts in the region, forming the basis of the Honorable Prime Minister's Development Initiative for the Northeast region. Panelists, participants, halfway to the 2030 agenda deadline, our progress, and I'm talking here globally, our progress on the SDGs is not where it needs to be. We have heard it before this year and earlier in a report, before the SDG Summit in New York, which took place in September 2023, only 12% goals across the world are on track. This means we need collective action to step up on our promise for a more sustainable, inclusive, equal, and prosperous world for all and for future generations. We are looking to companies, investors, startups, and youth to help us to build the networks, help countries enhance capacity, and leverage new technologies and platforms to solve our planet's toughest challenges. And we have heard before, I've mentioned, I mean, these challenges when the SDGs, when the Sustainable Development Agenda was designed, I believe there were challenges, but the challenges have only increased over the last 9 years. We firmly believe that the private sector can play an unparalleled role in supporting and accelerating the 2030 agenda. While sustainable development is a global challenge, bold, cooperative, and dynamic approaches is the only way ahead to ensure that we leave no one behind. And obviously, it's very important in every context to particularly find out who is at the risk of being left behind. Again, we need a very contextualized approach there. Platforms like today's discussions are critical in bringing all stakeholders together to share lessons and experiences from our efforts to advance sustainable development. I very much look forward to an enriching discussion and dialogue, and I would like to thank again Karan and the RISE team and all other panelists for coming together, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you so much, Isabel. I think you rang the bell for us to make sure that we are, the warning bell, I should add, to make sure that we are all geared towards Agenda 2030. And as you said rightly, it takes everybody, right from the private sector, right down to students and the youth, because they also play a very important role in doing this. You also spoke about the Indian model, the Indian SDG model. And I think that really, again, is something which I'm sure all of us would be interested to understand more about, And therefore, I am going to request Sangyutta Samadar, the Commissioner NCR, Government of UP, and ex-advisor SDG at NITI Aayog. Sangyutta, we need to pick your brains on this one really deep. So please.
Thank you
Tell
so
us
much.
how. Yeah.
Sorry.
Tell us how the Indian government has developed its own SDG ecosystem, and how was this whole of government approach undertaken when developing this ecosystem?
Thank you, Karen, for having me over here at the Global Rise Summit. And Isabella, thank you for setting the context of the SDGs. And, you actually started on the topic on which I can go on and on about the years of partnership that UNDP and NITI Aayog we started. So yes, the the question is largely globally when we see the SDGs are in peril. They are very fast disappearing into that rear view mirror, as the stock taking showed during the last SDG summit in 2023. And what it shows comes up, is 15% of the 169 global targets are on track, and the rest 37% are completely off track, while a 48% of the targets are moderately or severely off track. And herein lies, what are the negatives that we are dealing with? What is the grim picture? So 50% of the global population will be living in extreme poverty by 2030. Numbers as high as that. Another half a billion population lives in countries who are spending more on debt rather than on health and education. And look at the numbers. I mean, so this is the challenge that we are coming across. SDG financing gap, it is estimated at its $4 trillion in the entire sector if countries are supposed to meet the SDGs by 2030. And the biggest gap lies in the energy sector of almost like 2.2 trillion. Having said so, where does India stand in this global perspective where the SDGs are in trouble? And this is where Prime Minister Modi made the most important statement, that India holds the key to the world achieving the SDGs simply by the scale of the size of the population. Right. And with that, I think that was the beginning place where we started thinking in NITI Aayog, how does one make these the goals which are so global in nature, with its resolution, with its 169 targets, with 234 global indicators, how does one make those global indicators, align with our national agenda? Then take it further. We are a country of 1.4 billion population living in 36 states and union territories. Now, we all know that the states have a complete different, they have their own concurrent powers. They have their state list where every decision making and policy making lies in the hands of the states. So how does one take it to the state level? Further, how does one go granular to the level of 700 districts, the gram panchayats, and the 100 plus cities? And that's where we started working on, creating that Indian model. So that comes straight to that. This Indian model of SDG localization, we had kind of launched it with UNDP and UNRC in the high-level political forum in New York in 2022. It was widely appreciated, and it's being considered as a blueprint which can offer the solution for implementing and localizing SDGs in many parts of the world. So there are 4 pillars of it. The first is definitely creating an institutional ownership. Right. Now, what happens in SDGs is that because it is a cross-connected set of a huge comprehensive paradigm of interconnected goals, there's poverty, there's education, there's health, there's sanitation, there is economic infrastructure, there is environment. So look at the gamut of dimensions it's dealing with. So any one particular organization in the government will be completely inadept at dealing with this composite nature, this huge framework. And that's why creating these dedicated institutions was number one. That became NITI Aayog in the center. And in all states and union territories, the new structures which were created were these SDG coordination structures with UNDP, and then there were the SDG cells with the planning ministry and so on. What these dedicated structures brought about was anchoring this cross-connected agenda, and they brought in a whole lot of convergence across different departments working either in the states or in the center and so on. So that anchoring happened and bringing in the convergence happened. Simultaneously, what we did was create a model of collaboration and competition. So we called it competitive collaboration, where we made states and union territories, cities, districts compete with each other. We created a whole ranking mechanism of SDG India Index way back when I joined in NITI Aayog in 2017. And that's when we released the first index in 2018 and so on. So we created that sense of competition, which said that we are going to measure everybody on SDG outcomes, not on inputs and not on drivers and not on expenditure, but on straight SDG outcomes, which are so essential in the Agenda 2030. And when we started measuring this, that's what some states were, ranked high, like Himachal Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they were always ranking high. Some states were ranking low. So that led to a tremendous sense of competition. And over the years, what it has shown is that SDGs came permanently on the policy making table in the states, in the union territories, and chief ministers, chief secretaries started reviewing how their state was doing on SDG outcomes. And therefore, what happened? The entire state paraphernalia got together, focused their efforts, aligned their budgets, and so on. That's when the results started coming in. So this is largely what we did is, so the first pillar was creating, a dedicated institution. The second is exactly this, creating a very robust monitoring and review framework. So the monitoring framework we created through the SDG India Index, then we ranked the cities through the SDG Urban Index, then we measured the performance of our districts also of the Northeast, the 120 districts, and what it led to. Let me just come to the outcomes of it. It highlighted to all the policymakers sitting in the federal government and sitting in the states that which are the sectors which are critical, which need more comprehensive efforts, which need more budget allocation, and which need focused intervention. Secondly, it also pointed out which are those geographies, whether districts, whether states, which are doing back, which are lagging behind, which again need focused intervention. So I'll just give you an example of how the NER, the Northeastern Region SDG Index for the districts, that has become in fact the basis of a PM Divine scheme wherein Ministry of Donor we identify the red districts, the problematic districts and problematic sectors, and then finally project allocation and funding takes place through that. So this is the kind of monitoring and reviewing mechanism which we set up. But any monitoring mechanism will need to trigger action, and that is what UN's public sector report stated, that SDG India Index has become the primary tool for incentivizing action at the level of states. Very quickly, the third pillar is the entire structured way in which we develop capacities. Now, what happened when the SDGs came in with 300 indicators, 234 global indicators? There was tremendous pressure on our statistical systems, and they were unable to cope with the need for authentic data, reliable data, and granular data, and very high frequency data. So this entire monitoring system also and developing the capacities, that's what kind of work was needed at that point of time. Second point was largely that the states did not understand the shift. Many of us did not understand the shift from just focusing on expenditure on schemes or on inputs like classrooms made and boundary walls made and teachers hired, to actually outcomes. How do we measure the outcomes? What are the identifiable outcomes? And that shift required a lot of developing capacity. So we did this tremendous amount of workshops, NITI Aayog, from NITI Aayog, UNDP, we all partnered to do these, multiple workshops in all the states. We've covered all the states and union territories thoroughly at different levels of the organization. So this brought in the whole of government approach, tackling the government machinery at the state level, at the district level, at the Gram Panchayat level, across all the departments. But most important part, that our fourth pillar and the last pillar is based on partnerships. I think that is the hallmark of this entire Agenda 2030, that realization that government alone cannot achieve these, ambitious aspirational goals if we have to move towards a future which is resilient, which is sustainable, which is inclusive without leaving anyone behind. And that's where Annie will speak about it, how the NITI Aayog and Annie organization and UN, we got together to create, I think, the largest listening exercise that India had ever seen, with 14 marginalized communities being represented through 1,000 CSOs across the length and breadth of the nation. So bringing in the whole of society approach through the civil society, through the multilateral organizations, and very largely the private sector, which we are going to talk about tomorrow. So I think that became, these four essential areas, became the most important plank of our model of localization. And well, it has yielded results. If I just talk about a few things, like look at the number.
I will come back to this again a little later, because I think you already tagged Annie, and I think we should definitely go to her in that case, because you did say, that the result, and we'll come to the results, of course, right? So let's just pause there in the talking about partnerships, because I think that was the best way you tagged Annie, and therefore I will go to Annie itself. So Annie Namala is the is the director. I'm sorry, this is really today doesn't seem to be the right moment for me. Okay, the director for the Center for Social Equity and Inclusion. I am very sorry. I was just for it. And Annie, here, what Sangyuta said about partnerships, right? So how can civil society effectively partner with the government, obviously, but also how we are bringing in the whole of society, again, what Sangyuta talked about, to play a crucial role in accelerating the SDGs. So we're doing two parts, right, over here. As Isabel said, one is accelerating the SDGs, and the second is about localizing the SDGs, right? So how is that happening, and what are the capacities? Because again, while government is doing capacity building, I think a lot of capacity building is required at the civil society end as well, which is doing a great job. So how is that happening for really large scale collaborations? Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. And I'm taking from where Sanyukta had left. We've had this very long engagement over a year and a half during the VNR process. Thank you. And as Isabel said, it's really nice to have this panel of all women today. And yeah, if I would sort of look at, really thank you to both the, both the organizers and also UNDP for bringing us into this panel to really share the perspectives and opportunities that the civil society can engage with. So if I look at from a civil society perspective, to me, the very important contribution of the SDGs is really the reaching the furthest behind first and the leave no one behind, which, Sanyukta and all of us keep talking, because I think there is no doubt that, the world has progressed, India has progressed, though we do have challenges in particular spots. There's nothing that, prevents the kind of growth and development that we can see today. But I think the critical point is the leave no one behind groups, what we call, or the marginalized sections. And I think for India particularly, I would say, like what Sanyukta was saying, the whole structure that has been built, and the government does have this role and responsibility for creating the structures, building in the policies, provisions. But I think the big challenge in a country like India is the inability of the state administration at times to reach out to the most marginalized communities. Because the most marginalized communities, again, is not a homogeneous group. If you look at the Dalit community or the tribal community or even urban poor or anything, there's such a diversity within this community, and there's such a complexity also. So I think while the structures are there, how do you really ensure reaching out to this marginalized communities and those marginalized difficult areas to reach? How does that happen? I think that's where the civil society can really come in. And even when we say localization, the first picture that comes to us is the government, the local governments. But, localization also means the local communities, the local geographical areas which are difficult to reach. So how do we sort of ensure that the multi-dimension of localization is also included within the development paradigm that we are building? I think for India, fortunately, while we do have this very complex population group, I think the population group that we are talking about is really huge in India, diverse. If you look at the urban poor, if you look at the Dalit community, the tribal community, the minority communities, the PWD communities, we have the UN itself has about 20 plus major groups and stakeholders which are considered to be the stakeholders for the SDGs. So and all of them and more can be represented in India. So to reach out to this large section with its complexity, I think one major institution that can play a big role is the civil society organizations. And why I would say that is, each of these communities have their inherent historical disadvantages, current inability to reach the kind of growth and development that we are talking about, whether it's technology, whether it's education, so many other dimensions. So you really need agents from within these communities to be the accelerators within the communities. And luckily for us today, if you look at the civil society in India represents and comes from all these communities. So you do have civil society organizations that have been created and are being led by each of these groups, whether it's the construction workers, whether it's the nomadic communities, whether the LGBT communities, tribal communities, Dalit communities. So there is such a rich variety and vibrant civil society organizations that come from these communities. And I think they hold an important key because one, they have an experiential knowledge of what they are talking about. Second, they are actually role models and motivators within their communities and can connect to other communities. So I think that is a very strong impetus for the civil society to be coming in and a kind of a collaboration. But the civil society's two big challenges that I would see is really the resource challenge that they have and the scaling up challenge. See, many of us are small organizations and, resources has become a huge challenge in multiple ways. For scaling up, at least, we do have a number of, forums, networks. Like I myself, when I engaged with the BNR process, I was convening the Vadanatodo platform, which is a fairly large network within the country. So if you look at some of the very commendable policies that we've had, whether it's the right to education, the right to food, the right to information, I think civil society has had an important role. The civil society forums and networks particularly has had an important role in building this up. So scaling up we can do. But I think there needs to be this collaboration with the government, with the private sector, with other agencies. And at the global level, also civil society is connected to the global civic forums, all the global actors. So I think there is an environment in which we can build together. I mean, for a very simple example, out of the 300 and odd indicators, like Sanyukta was saying, many don't have data, because we've not been able to look at the 2-tier and the 3-tier data for even comparing or monitoring the progress. So very recently, many of us have been involved with the UN Statistical Commission on looking at citizen or community generated data, because you can't go to every small pocket and get data at the national level. So there is this whole engagement to see, can we build a collaborative on citizen or community generated data, so that it may not be part of the national statistical data, but it can contribute to policy thinking and, this whole objective that we have of moving forward. So I think in many ways, India, we do have a very strong, vibrant civil society organizations that have done commendable work in pushing many of the agendas. And within the VNR, we identified 14, 16 communities which have been mentioned, brought into the report. So I would say there is a great collaboration that we should be able to build up on. I'll stop here now.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've already built on and we need to continue building. And I think all of you are already tagging the next person you'll want to bring into the conversation, it would seem, based on what you just said, talking about private sector. Yeah. And we have with us Nusrat Pathan, who's the head of CSR at HDFC Bank. And Nusrat, I know there's a small issue on the camera front, but we still want to hear from you, because I think that's such an important thing, to have your voice over here and to have you share with us, because I know about Parivartan that had a huge impact. I mean, it is huge scale, right? And that's really what is required right now, both for accelerating as well as localizing the SDGs. So maybe if you can give us some of your thoughts on, what can business really do to really help us in this quest to obviously achieve the SDGs, and to make sure that we, as the SDG report says, meet it in full and in time. So yes, Nusrat, please, over to you. I do hope we can hear you. Nusrat? No. She's coming in as an attendee. Okay. We can see you, Nusrat, that we cannot hear you, unfortunately. Perhaps I'll come back to you. Maybe we can try one more time if you could maybe come in again. Yes? I think let's do that. We do have one more private sector person with us, and I'm so glad for that because Pooja Trishul is the director of Flipkart Foundation. Yeah, and Pooja, I know that you said that you'll have recently started, but you've already made great strides in terms of what you are looking to do with vis-a-vis some of the SDGs that you're working on. So maybe in general for now, maybe if you can just share with us a little bit about how does private sector really start engaging and ensuring that working with civil society, working with government, working with the UN agency, how are you going to help us with the SDGs? Over to you.
Thank you, Karen. As you rightly said, Flipkart Foundation was formally launched in April 2022. So we're a little less than 2 years old as of today. What is very interesting in our case was when we were trying to decide the pillars or the thematic areas for our intervention, I think at the core of it was the commitments we as India have made for the SDG goals. So that really factored in determining the thematic areas for the foundation. We did also look at the CSR spend at that point of time in the country and looking at the gap areas, we identified 4 thematic areas for Flipkart Foundation, primarily to work around, supporting micro nano entrepreneurs. All of us on this group, I'm sure, know about the success story of Flipkart. So, it made sense to sort of, promote that micro nano entrepreneurship. And I think today in the country, we see the culture is ripe in terms of, talking more about the entrepreneurship. Again, a couple of my fellow panelists did talk about the fact that, it's important we reach those who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So I think there's a conscious choice at the end of at foundation's end, primarily to work with a lot of these marginalized groups. So we do have targeted interventions today with persons coming from economically weaker backgrounds, because it's important to work with them. We've got a lot of focus projects for persons with disabilities today, doing some work with transgender communities, working with the tribal folks, working with women in the rural areas. So essentially, the larger point I'm trying to make is that, if we want to make success of SDGs, the need is to make sure that we work with people at the bottom of the pyramid and empower them. I also, I think Sanyukta talked about it, and she made a very important point where she talked about, that we need to go beyond just talking, a shift in the sector, going beyond the activities and looking at the outcomes. And I think at Foundation, there's a very strong emphasis on that part of it. Because, it's not just about what are you doing, it's essentially about seeing what is that action translating into. Is it really making that difference in the lives of the underprivileged or the marginalized that we are trying to work? So at Foundation, I think we do lay a lot of emphasis in terms of, Karen, looking at the outputs, outcomes, the performance indicators, and, it's a journey working with partners. So most of our work happens with the NGO partners on the ground. And rightly so, again, a couple of our panelists talked about, the connect they bring with the community. They have the ground level information. So again, one point to sort of re-emphasize, and I'm sort of jumping, but want to bring a couple of key points that came through the conversation so far was the collaboration piece of it, and, playing to the strengths each one of us and bringing what we can bring to the table to create that larger impact together holistically. So I think we work with a lot of credible NGO partners today on the ground, given their connect with the communities. And those are larger things. Now, again, from an SDGs perspective, given the context of India, and I often say this, that, we need scalable solutions. And, when my fellow panelists were talking about the facts and figures in terms of how we have been performing with SDGs right now, seems like, we got to get our act furthermore together to make that impact going forward. So From a scalable perspective, we have been always trying to see how do we leverage technology to our advantage. So today, in a lot of our projects that we do on the ground, we try to see how do we bring those technology aspects, how do we bring community and technology together to create that larger impact. Just wanted to talk about that largely. Then, again, it's about creating champions of change, again, given the humongous nature of the problem. So at different levels, working with our employees on the one hand, working with larger communities and larger stakeholder base, because you see, essentially, it's about working with all key stakeholders together to create that impact primarily. So we do work with a lot of ecosystem players today to create impact broadly. Now, I think one larger thing, what we as Flipkart Foundation really strongly believe is that, we can all do our bit. And while that bit is very important, it calls for all key stakeholders coming together to create that larger change on the ground primarily. I'll be happy, Karan, to talk a bit about the work that we have done very recently on our skilling project. So on the skilling project at Flipkart Foundation, we have been reaching about over 4,000 youth. These come from economically marginalized families. We also have very focused projects meant for the persons with disabilities. So I'll just talk a bit about the work that we're doing with persons
If
with
you don't
disabilities.
mind, can I, because I think when you talk about skilling, NABARD just kind of happens to be all over the place with that, right? So I just will maybe bring in Asha, and then we'll of course come back to you on this. But thanks a lot, Pooja. I think what you said, in terms of credible NGOs and working with them makes all the difference, right? Also, what Annie said, working with NGOs who are on the ground, who really are there working very closely with the community. There is a need for that, and obviously making sure that you have the whole due diligence to make sure that the partnerships are great, and that brings the mutual trust and respect. Because that's the most important thing in partnerships, right? If you do not have that kind of level of mutual understanding, shared vision, trust, accountability, partnerships cannot work. And I think, that is what's coming out very clearly based on what you're saying. So we'll come back to programmatic again one more time, but maybe I just want to again go back, bring in Asha, because in this sense, when we talk about, like I said, skilling and livelihood, NABARD is definitely someone we think about. So Asha Chandra is the Deputy General Manager at NABARD, and of course has worked extensively on skill development as well as many different forms of entrepreneurship and livelihood programs. So Asha, may I please ask you to talk a little bit of what are the kind of sustainable livelihood? Because one of the bigger problems also about livelihood is what we used to say when we first started the ABC, where we used to just talk about agarbatti, baskets, and candles. That was that ABCD model of livelihood. Obviously, that's no longer valid and definitely not even desired, with us moving up the supply chain. So NABARD has really taken that step to kind of revamp the entire livelihood sector. So maybe you could share a little bit on these kind of things, both from the urban world as well as the rural. I mean, I know there's a lot of rural that is there that NABARD predominantly focuses on, but a lot of it trickles back to urban because of the migration that happened. So there is a lot of indirect also impact that NABARD kind of speaks to. So maybe you could help us a little bit on that. Yeah.
So thank you, Karan. Thank you for having me here. And it's great to hear from all the fellow panelists here. So as you rightly said, sustainable livelihood. NABARD is working in this area for past many years, since its inception, I can say. But before, a disclaimer that NABARD has three important roles to play. One is supervisory. We are supervisors to, rural financial institutions. That supervision is being done by us. We have financing agencies. So that we give a lot of refinance, direct finance to various, startup, various agencies. And apart from that, the one more very important role we play, that is development role. About NABARD, about which I'll be talking about. So under development role, you said sustainable livelihood. So we understand sustainable livelihood is the kind of livelihood where people are able to cope up with any kind of stress, or they can handle any stress situation and come back to their livelihood assets. So NABARD is working for development of these livelihood assets per se. So if I talk about human assets, there are, all must be knowing that there are, 5-6 assets identified as livelihood assets. One is human, social, financial, and then, natural assets and all that. So first of all, I would like to, since we are talking about, skilling and all, so I'll take that human assets, human capital, how we, believe in building that human capital. So NABARD, since inception days, have been conducting a lot of rural, skilling programs under various names. So be it for rural youth, be it for women, per se. And these skilling programs is not only imparting the skill, actually also taking care at the same time, giving them idea about the market, giving them guidance on finance, and actually hand-holding these trained people to get, all that backward forward linkages is the, typical words we use, that you're able to set up an enterprise or maybe able to get a good job and able to earn a livelihood. So under this, we have been doing a lot of skilling program, and thanks to, partners like civil society partners I was talking about. We do through civil society partners, CSR foundations, and we are reaching out to them for conducting these livelihoods, and we are partnering with them for conducting all sort of livelihoods program. So this is building that human, capital for sustainable livelihood. So this human capital, we have so many women-centric programs also, where women are taken, actually handhold on their entrepreneurial journey, like skilling, then linking them with market, providing them all the guidance, linking them with banks. So we have specific program for women also. In fact, now we are training women how they can, small women artisans, how they can onboard to, this online platforms like Amazon or Flipkart, how they can sell there. So we are also changing with the time. These are the requirement of the time that women are provided such kind of guidance. So this way we have been, and we are still building on human capital for sustainable livelihood. If I may talk about social capital, this is also a very important aspect of livelihood, sustainable livelihood, because this is a coping mechanism. So under social capital, we have been, we are firm believer in this. And one of our pilot project, which started way back in, say, 1985 or so, you must have heard this self-help group bank linkage program. Today is the world's largest microfinance program. There are more than, 13 million odd SDGs who are already having bank accounts. There, out of that, 7 to 8 million are accessing bank credit, that is institutional credit. So we have brought through this program, women have become a center of, kind of their household. And they are having I can say they are having their voice, they are being heard, and, some decisive role they are able to play. So these SDGs story is in itself says that we actually believe in this, building this social capital, taking forward this, apart from SDG bank linkage, under this social capital, we have started, building this, promoting producer organizations also. So we have, this program started in 2014-15, when we started promoting farmers producer organizations. Today, NABARD has promoted close to 7,000 farmers producer organizations. There are several agencies promoting this farmers producer organization. We call it FPOs. So NABARD on its own has promoted close to 7,000. The membership is some more than 2 million, and at least the best part about this is, out of this membership, 70 to 80% are small and marginal farmer, the segment we all have been talking about. We need to take them and mainstream these segment, and take them along. So it's a kind of great pleasure that we are able to reach out to these people who are marginalized. So this is one aspect. Then this FPOs, at least 50% are already having some kind of tie-up with the, institutional buyers. So we are also trying to reduce the dependency on middlemen or whatever. So they are having the direct contact with the market. This is the best thing to happen to that ecosystem, entire ecosystem, where farmers are having their voice. They are getting their products, accumulating their products, and they are having that bargaining power. So this social capital is actually giving them that power that they can decide their terms of trade. So apart from farm sector, we're also trying to develop, this thing, producer organizations in non-farm sector. There, though it started a little late, so under this, some close to 90 odd, farm producer organizations are there. These producer organizations are mainly helping the artisans of handloom and handicraft sector. I was just going through my. So, anybody? Yes. Any question?
Yeah. No, there wasn't.
Okay. So these producer organizations are okay. These organizations are able to actually reach out to markets. In fact, I was just going through an article which says that one producer organization of women, they are selling that Ladakh. They are selling their shawls to New York. So these kind of interventions are possible. Of course, we need great partners. We need collaborations with CSR foundations, with people like NE. We also partner with government agencies. So through this collaborations only, we are able to whatever we have been doing so far, and we believe that we'll be able to take it much further.
Sure.
So So beside this, I was talking about this capital. So social capital, human capital. Then we also talk about physical capital. So NABARD Indian's financing role builds this capital where we finance, agencies which are actually doing these kind of projects. We finance state governments for rural infrastructure projects. So physical capital is in place, and then human capital we try to build on that, and this social capital that provides the safety net. So entire ecosystem is kind of being promoted here. And apart from that, we are also very actively engaged in this climate change. Whatever the impacts of climate change are there also we are trying to address that. You all must be knowing
I'm going to come in, Asha, because I want to keep climate change and gender for just a little bit towards the end of our conversation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I'm also going to go back to Trishul. And the reason why I said that, Pooja, that I will talk to you a little after Asha comes in is because, NABARD has a focus on rural, right? And I wanted to make sure that we get two perspectives of urban and rural slightly differently. So I wanted you to hear her before you. So I'll just come back to you on the livelihood programs that you are doing, which has more of an impact on the on the urban aspects. But of course, again, I could keep saying, they're all integrated because people who are in urban areas go back to rural and vice versa. So maybe Pooja, now you could let us know a little on the skill development part that you are working on in Flipkart Foundation, please.
Thank you, Karen. So, ours is a very in the initial stages of our journey, so there's a long way to go for us. Couple of our current projects have surely been very, very urban focused. So we have been working in slums of Mumbai, Delhi, and a couple of other places with the youth coming from economically weaker families. But we also have been doing some work with persons with disabilities. So I'll take maybe a minute or so to talk about it, because we realize those are the ones who get really left. One, the persons with disabilities, and also the LGBTQIA segment people. So there are few projects that we have been doing with them. And our learnings show that, it cannot be a normal, regular kind of training program. So with persons with disabilities, these are residential training programs in the first place. We realized nothing else would sort of work. So second is, it's just because, you have to keep it at a pace where it works for them. So it cannot be to say 50 hours, 210 hours and get done with it kind of a thing. So we have really done more of work around experiential training with them. So it's a lot of hands-on work individually with each one of them at their own pace primarily. And it's beyond the skill set as well, in terms of also supporting them with assistive devices, be that wheelchairs, hearing aids, and other things, essentially creating that supportive. So the larger message, if I have to bring out, is the fact that it calls for a very supportive ecosystem, or an enabling ecosystem for it to be successful for these persons with disabilities, particularly, because their personal self-confidence is very, very low. So with the partners, we have this tagline where they use it primarily to show, which is about, showcasing the abilities and celebrating the abilities rather than talking about the disabilities. So again, we are doing it with a couple of NGO partners with us. And we have seen great results. Over 70% and above the people whom we have been training, they have been getting placed. So that's great. Very recently, we started something with LGBTQIA. Again, very difficult to, one, bring them for the training, stay for the training, get into the job and stay onto the job. So I think overall in our larger skilling program, couple of things that we have been trying to do is, Karen and everyone, we have been trying to make sure that we provide the placement support and also provide the post-placement support, because those are the defining factors to make sure they get enough support. For most of them, this is the first job. So, if you don't provide that post-placement support, many a times, they just don't know how to handle it out there. So we've been doing that. Then, of course, there are a lot of training programs. We do a lot of generic training programs, but we also do some specific training programs. For example, the LGBTQI training program is a specialized training program. All of them will get placed in the housekeeping or hospitality sector. And there's already a tie-up or understanding with the hotels primarily to place them. So, you have to weave it end to end, right from choosing the right kind of beneficiaries to making sure there is support for them, an enabling environment to thrive and perform well out there. And like I said, we also want to be getting into rural kind of skilling space. In fact, we have been right now doing a couple of entrepreneurship programs in a couple of parts of India.
Pooja, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop here because I think that's
Absolutely.
a great conversation to have offline with Asha later. And that's the best thing, right, of having a conversation like this, because you start seeing the kind of possibilities and even more, of synergies that you can possibly take forward. So I definitely hope both of you are going to have a very serious chat on this, in fact, and, maybe come up with something else, right? And I'm so glad to see Kanta back here with us because I was just waiting to talk about gender, because just as capacity building is something that you require across all SDGs, gender is yet another issue, and then climate action is yet another issue. What I'm also going to request maybe Isabel to do to keep you ready is that I really want to see how you want to maybe reflect on what the other speakers have kind of said something on this, the no one leave behind on one hand, which we have spoken about, but also on the other hand, what Asha has spoken about, the wealth economy, because we are constantly talking about financial capital, right? But at the same time, we tend to forget how we can leverage other forms of capital, which is your human capital, your social capital, your physical capital, and perhaps that could help us bridge that gap, that huge gap that is there right now in the financing deficit. But of course, we'll wait to hear from you on that in just a bit. And in the meantime, I'm going to ask Kanta to perhaps, share with us her thoughts about the SDGs and how does gender become this cross-cutting issue that we must all definitely keep in mind when we are looking at it. Yeah, Kanta, over to you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for inviting me to be part of such an enriching discussion. On SDGs, I'm sure everybody else has also talked about why these goals are very important for all the countries to come together and also decide where the progress is going. Because it is not a linear process. It's not something that each country is committed to doing. So probably this was a guiding document for all of us. We also know that no country has made sufficient progress on equality and the goal 5, gender equality goal, and it's a work in progress. While I'm saying this, there has been progress on multiple accounts, even within goal 5, but we are nowhere being close to the targets that we had set for ourselves. This is also something that countries agreed on together. Nobody forced them. Nobody kind of pushed it from top to say this is what you are going to do. World leaders agreed on these goals. So in that sense, I think there's a commitment from governments, and Government of India is highly committed to achieving the goals. Unfortunately, I really don't think goal 5 will be achieved fully. Having said that, I must admit that there's a lot that has happened, Karen. We are almost at par in terms of education. There's a greater focus on women's entrepreneurship. This morning I was speaking in a panel on women's entrepreneurship and livelihood, and I was saying at least one thing we have done successfully, that is creating a huge noise around why women need a share in the global finance pie. What, however, remains to be done is the wealth transfer. You're just talking about wealth. 87% of the world's land is in the hands of man. And so are the financial institutions. So are the leadership positions. And those are some of the key areas where we need to focus to achieve goal 5. So more financing for gender equality, definitely. And different kinds of finance, because women are not same. You have different kinds of segments of women. Women who have not been fortunate enough to get educated, women who have started their businesses, women who are keen to start something, women, girls who are studying, girls who are completing their school education. So there are multiple kinds of needs of women, and each woman has a specific need. So how do we create financing models that are able to address the specific needs of each segment? So that is definitely one of the key priorities for each government, India in particular. Second thing that I think we need to push for is women's leadership, Karen. And you can stop me anytime you think I have overspoken in terms of my time. Women's leadership across sectors. It's not just in one. And Women's Reservation Bill is a timely legislative reform that Government of India has brought in, and I think that will bring a lot of voice into the highest decision-making body, and also in the state assemblies. As and when it gets implemented, of course, we always have challenges there. But thus, leadership across private sector, government sector, leadership in the VC funding, leadership across the lines. And the third thing that we need to probably do is to let women loose. Seriously, we don't have to tell them what to do. There's nothing that they can't do today. And there's absolute clarity amongst young women now that they need to raise their voice. They have to be where the decisions are made. And they probably need to be not told what to do and what not to do. And we need to start practicing that very soon. If we think, we were kept out of financial institutions, science academies, we were kept out of many, many big events because they thought we are women, right? And so time has come and we have to stop doing this. And my recent example, which I always share, is the COP28, where you saw all these, rich men going in their private jets wearing green ties on black suits, because men smell money. And that's where the money is. Climate action is where the money is. And that's where women are not there. So we don't need to be shy about having a pie of that fund, because climate is where the money is going to be, because it impacts women and girls the most.
Almost scared. So Kanta, I'm almost scared to say anything just now, because you just said we cannot stop women from talking. We should not. So I'm like, I'm sorry, but right now I'm going to ask you, because I just want to keep the climate action piece later on. Kanta went away. No, I know she's in multiple things right now, and she really gave me a small window. But I'm so glad she could be here to talk really quickly. Oh, Kanta, I thought because I told you no, you're going to tell me bye. But thank you. No, thank you so much. I think every single point, all the 3 points you made are so valid. We do need to raise our voice, and I'm so proud that right now we are all women here. But of course, we need men in this. It is not about men against women. It is us together. And I always say, when I speak about gender equality, I always say we don't need gender equality, and people think I'm mad. There's something wrong. We call her to speak about gender equality, and then I say no, we need gender balance. We need gender balance. We need to make sure that at every stage we have the right kind over there, and of course all the genders for that matter. So I'm going to pause over here, because climate action, the reason I'm pausing is because I just said the other time also that climate action, I want it to be the next part of what we're going to be discussing, in terms of this thing. But I'm going to bring Isabel in because as I said earlier, Isabel, yes, Kanta, and I hope you're going to make it back again very quickly. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Thank
we'll
you.
see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So Isabel, we've heard so much already, right? And one of the things that we do at the Rise World Summit is not have panels which are just one-way conversations, but really bringing everybody together and having this interactive conversation. And I'll talk a little bit more about that format just after we hear from Isabel. So what would you think we've heard just now, and how does that make you feel about both accelerating the SDGs as well as localizing them? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for also, I think, great moderation. Thank you so much. Well, I'm not going to summarize, but maybe just to echo and build on some points made by fellow panelists, by this wonderful women panel. Private sector, I think it's obviously highly important, and it's great obviously to have colleagues, panelists from private sector here, and to see also the different roles they're playing. Two points. One is just from the UNDP perspective, and Sanyukta, maybe you have also been, and I'm so glad to meet you at least virtually. Maybe you've also, heard in how we have been together with NITI Aayog and the state planning commissions working also in the SDG coordination centers. And I think the most prominent example is in Karnataka, how we have built together this Akanksha platform, where we have, it's a matchmaking platform where private sector, well, it is the data, what is needed in terms of investment to accelerate SDGs in the Karnataka state, and where state with private sector with CSR funds can come in and support this acceleration. So I think that is quite an interesting model, and we are now also in Mizoram, we have been also trying to put that in place, and we are in discussion to see in the whole northeastern, in the state of the northeast region, how we can facilitate that, also particularly where private sector is obviously much less present than in a state like Karnataka. So I think that is a very interesting model, and we'll be happy to further have this discussion with the panelists from the private sector who are in the panel today. Very interested also in hearing from Pooja on the skill building, specifically for, I don't know if the LNOB groups, but for communities which are at the risk of being left behind. I think that is something also for UNDP going forward. We will certainly, we are working on skill building, especially on youth with LNOB groups, the link to make what is their role specifically in accelerating the SDGs. I think that's one more step which we could make together. Then Annie, on citizen-generated data, I think we had a chance to discuss just a little bit in earlier occasions, but it's a highly important element, and obviously, but generally the role of CSOs. I think there we have still the link between the data produced at the national level and produced at the state level, and then the citizen-generated data and the role of CSOs in that, and just, well, communities in that. That is, I think, the linkages we can further try to work together how to make those linkages that links also with the skill building, right? So we want also, in terms of participation and inclusion, that this data comes out from all the groups. So that's another link I think we could make together. Yes, I think that is the main points I wanted to make. Very important as well, obviously, youth. Well, if we talk, I said it quickly in my introductory remarks, but if, I mean, this is obviously, yes, we are working up to 2030, but there will be a life beyond 2030 as well. And we will really need the youth to go forward and to building the skills, and then obviously skills of youth also from so-called groups being at the risk of left behind. I think that is highly important, and we're seeing that also in terms of capacities. I mean, you know more than I do, but in some states at the district level, the need to build these capacities of groups at this level is highly important. We see obviously huge differences between the different states, and that's where I think we need to further invest to accelerate at the local level. I stop here. Thank you so much, Karan, and everybody. Very highly inspiring discussion. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Isabel. And I could see you looking at your notes, and I can see Sangeeta writing notes. So I think we're doing a fairly good job of keeping everybody active in terms of this. So I was also going to tell you about how the Rise One Summit, roundtables are done, right? It's not really like a panel. It's about discussion. And the way we talk about is three critical things. One is challenges. The second is capabilities, and then the third is collaboration. So we've touched on all of these, I think, in small pieces in all of it. And so, but I want to talk about this very specifically in terms of the challenges to Sangeeta, because I think we have to bring some of these things out. And what are these challenges in localizing SDGs? Because I know government is doing a lot in terms of the whole tracker and bringing it down to the panchayat level. But what are these challenges you think that are there for us to even go further and make sure we can actually achieve the kind of goals we are set and targets that we are setting for ourselves? Yeah. Over to you,
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Karen, for the question. I think this is one question we've been dealing with, ever since I started working in the SDGs in NITI Aayog, which is for the last 6-7 years now. We are coping with these challenges. So now, broadly speaking, if I can just, pinpoint the challenges to you, firstly, definitely is that, when I'm talking about the government, now NITI Aayog, a think tank at the Government of India level, anchoring the SDGs, developing the preparedness of the states and the state governments and so on, subnational governments on SDGs. The first thing is that departments don't talk to each other. We love to work in our silos. We love our turf, and we don't want anybody entering in our turf, and we will also not mind, touching anybody's turf. So what does this silo-oriented approach do to something like as comprehensive a framework of development, which has so much of synergies and so much of trade-offs across, all the goals? So energy security lies at the heart of poverty. But do you think the energy department will ever talk to the poverty alleviation schemes or the departments running that? So our biggest challenge here was government, in both ministries in the center and departments in the state. They would just not look at each other. And what states did, a very simplistic, when we were giving them the push that you have to do SDGs, you have to monitor. So they would make, let's say, one department nodal for a particular goal. For example, the Women and Child Department was made responsible for Goal 5, which is gender equality, and Zero Hunger, which is Goal 2. Now, we all know that, Goal 2, hunger, cannot be just met by WCD. Food and Consumer Affairs comes into it. The public distribution system comes into it. The entire agriculture department comes into it through the supply side of it. So, and everything. So the health and nutrition and education with decent work and economic growth with climate action, everything is interlinked. So making the states and the departments understand that working in their silos will not help it, and you will keep coming last always in the rankings. I think that was one challenge that we are still not, I cannot say that has been fully overcome, but yes, it is a work in progress. The second challenge is definitely, so this was the lack of convergence approach. The second was largely, the monitoring and review challenges. So our statistical systems, the need to generate. Can you imagine suddenly the statistical system in the center and in the state has to come up with granular level data for every district for 300 indicators? So we began with 50 indicators, then in another year it went on to 100, then it went on to 115. Even now there are these tier 3, tier 2 indicators where there is no sanity of how does one generate data. Also, there is a distrust. If you know, this is an honest discussion. There is always a distrust between the government and the citizen generated data, and that is where we could see during our consultations, which Vada Natoro under Annie was kind of curating all through, that there was so much of rich data coming up through for the disabilities, for the LGBTQs, for the Dalits, for the migrants. But there was some kind of a reluctance in the ministries of accepting that data. And therefore, that conversation started, there began the conversation of how does one, make that citizen generated data also pass through a layer of several layers of authenticity checks so that it can be used as a reliable a third party validation kind of a thing. The third challenge which we found was largely the capacity building. Yes, that is a tremendous challenge. Capacity building has its, across the levels of government, from the top level to the mid level to people in the grassroots, in the districts, officers working in the gram panchayats, in the block panchayats. There is no understanding of what a multi-pronged approach and convergence approach can bring in. So even I'll take a simple example. So we have the Ministry of Rural Development. Ministry of Rural Development works at least through 8 or 9 schemes, for example, Manrega, National Rural Livelihood Mission, PMGSY, all this in the rural areas. But rural development is also a function of health department, of nutrition department, of education department. The problem is that in the gram panchayat, in the block panchayat, the officers of these departments would never see eye to eye. So there's a complete disjunct amongst all these departments. So that's one thing. And therefore that, the capacity building had to happen not only to bring in technological tools, new technology to kind of make the citizens aware that these are the services and this is how one fills in if you are a beneficiary and so on, and the feedback of it. So that's one thing. And largely, I think the biggest challenge that we had is the financing gap, and which I've already stated, like all over. Sectorally, if you see energy transition requires 2.2 trillion. So this is the kind of, the just transition part of it. Then our focus, we are becoming a massive leader in renewables. We are the fourth largest renewable generating country in the world. Solar has increased by 11 times. There is also the challenge that the 20 million people who will be shifting out of the traditional coal and petrochemical based industries, where will they go? And that's where the entire ecosystem of skilling comes in. So the challenges have been several. However, at the end of it, with time, with transparency, with consultations, with regular consultations, and with partnerships with organizations like Isabel is there, with UNDP, that we have had we started the MOU in 2019, and it goes on and strong. So with that, there has been a huge amount of development, also strengthening of institutions has happened at the state levels. And it's nice to see at now, this juncture, chief ministers and chief secretaries personally review how the state is doing on the SDGs, on the SDG India Index. And further, the acceleration part of it comes in when we pick the 5 worst districts in every state and then try to work on how to improve their situation. So literally between 2018 to 2021, if we see, 2018, UP, Bihar and Assam were the worst in the country when it came to the SDGs. And it's nice to see that now in 2021, the last index, none of the states are in red, and almost 22 states are in the green category, which is the front runner category, and only some are in the yellow category. So there has been a lot of progress, and that is what there have been challenges, but in these challenges, we found the opportunities of building this
Great.
engagement process with states, with multilateral organizations, with civil society partners. And that is how the progress could come in. And it's nice to see now that, 135 million people have been lifted out of multidimensional
Great.
poverty in the last 5 years. So yes,
Thank-
there has
Yes.
been progress and the model is successful.
Thank
Right.
you. Yes, you covered challenges, capabilities, and collaboration. All three, Sangeeta. Thank you very much. At this stage, I would really encourage everyone to keep coming in as you feel best, because, as I said, we want to talk about all the three things and also about cross-cutting issues, whether it is gender or whether it is climate change. I think these are all something that is affecting each one of us. So it's not really, only up to one particular sector or stakeholder group. That's number one. Number two is also, I think, for me, the collaboration piece, because as we are coming to the end, can't believe it, we've already done 1.5 hours, right? As we're coming towards the last segment of the conversation, I really want to move us edges as much as I can, because all powerful women on this panel, and it's very difficult for me to kind of make sure that we are sticking to one particular conversation. So, but of course, we're happy to hear from all of you, right? So I do want us to move a little bit towards collaboration, because what are those synergies? Like we just said, Pooja and Asha could definitely have a conversation about that. But what is it, perhaps, considering that each of us here are from different sectors, right? From different, groups and stakeholder groups, that what is it that we can do as a collective, as a collaborative, as an outcome from this conversation, so that we have something more to take back than, a great conversation, of course, right? So, Annie, just as Sangeeta spoke about NGO, having issues with the departments, interdepartmental coordination, what do you think would it take for us NGOs and social enterprises and social organizations, civil society as a whole, to collaborate a lot more? Because I think we are equally, fragmented, right? If we are honest about it. While yes, the Vadana Todo is a great example, and that came under the capability piece, great example of collaboration and great work that is done. There are still many people, and these are such few and far in between. So how can we encourage more and more NGOs to work together, so that we can maximize efficiency and utilization of resources, which is a problem. Like you said, that was the challenge, right? So if you could maybe, share some thoughts on that.
Thank you. I'm just reminded of Sanyukta in some of our consultations. I think the strength.
A tigress never changes her stripes.
That to the Royal Bengal tigress.
But I suppose NCR needs it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. As I said, very difficult to keep us on track. Very easy
big
for us.
animal by itself.
Okay. Yeah, Annie, over to you, please.
Yeah, when it comes to NGOs, I think like every other sector, there is a huge diversity. And if I would sort of say, I can look at two critical diversities. One is a community-led NGOs. Like the PWD people have associations of their own, where it is then able to reach out to members of that community, knowing what are the critical challenges and building that knowledge into that process. I think those organizations are very important, because they have really a reach, intergenerational reach. It's not in one generation that we are going to get over this problem. It's really an intergenerational issue. So we do have a lot of engagement of civil society organizations, be it the Dalit, the tribal, the minority, the gender. I was very, very, very encouraged to have the sex worker organizations in the Vadana Todo network. And for very traditional Dalit leaders and tribal leaders to be conversing with the sex worker organizations on par. And very recently in Rajasthan and other places, the NTDNT communities were coming together as their organization. So I think the strength is having agents and leadership from the most marginalized communities like the Musahar community in Bihar or any other place, you know. So I think that is a huge network, and they are fragmented in the sense their strength being locally located, so that local location is there, but there are also overarching networks of these very same organizations, like the forest rights issues are dealt by a variety of tribal organizations. It's not like one tribal organization. Or the NREGA issues led by a number of organizations together. So I would say that's one strength that we can really dip into. And then there are also these organizations that have very strong issue or skill-based orientation. I would say, be it education, be it nutrition, be it child rights, be it violence, looking at the whole criminal laws and things like that. So I think there's a great amount of resources and ownership, what Sanyukta was talking about. There's a great ownership within the civil society networks that you can depend upon. I'm not also wanting to sort of say everything is hunky-dory with the civil society platform, but these are some of the good things that we can latch upon, And the other thing with India, I think, is we have some very great knowledge-based organizations, be it climate change, be it livelihoods, be it financing for development, be it policy documents. So I think there is a variety of organizations, and many of us are connected to the global civil society platforms. Like I'm connected to the World Data Forum and the UN Statistical Commission on citizen-generated data, connected to a global Leave No One Behind platform. So, and many of our colleagues are connected. So one is that the forums that civil society has, there is a great collaboration going on, and there is a great potential. It's not like you have to reach out to 1,000 organizations. Like Vadanathoda, when we did the VNR, we reached out to 1,000 organizations. I remember in 11-12, I was having a conversation with UNDP, and I said, it's not only the big civil society organization, there are many small ones. And we did a study of over 900 organizations at that time, looking at how do we deepen democracy and development within the marginalized community. So I think it is and there are possible people that we can connect to, whether it's any sector, like, whether it's environment, climate, food, nutrition, children. There are known actors from the civil society that we can connect to, who can bring together others, depending on which area, which location, what we need to do. My only challenge sometimes, particularly working with the private sector, has been like some of these communities and young people. Like I work a lot with young people, particularly in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and I'm aghast at the level of schooling that they have. It's like, that inequality is not going to be bridged for the next generation. It's like, I'm aghast coming from a southern India educated person, like, schooled person. The Bihar and UP are for me like beyond imagination, like, So I think it sometimes goes beyond the kind of numbers and timelines that we can, like what Pooja was saying, it takes a lot more of energy and effort to support that whole process of moving forward. And sometimes with the private sector's demands on maybe numbers or outcomes becomes a little unviable to help these. A tribal person coming into a Delhi university, it's totally out of place for them. It takes a long time for that child to really adjust and find their feet, and need other people in that sector to support them. So I think some of these numbers and processes may not be so feasible with the marginalized communities particularly, and we would need to give that extra support mechanisms. But there are any number of expertise, any number of community contacts, any number of possible collaboration. We wouldn't come into too much of a conflict if we pick up a program dimension that we want to build up.
Thank you so much, Annie. I think there are two things that I've picked up from here. One is democratizing opportunities and partnerships. I think that whole hierarchy of donor, implementer, and then grassroots NGOs totally kind of, takes away from the kind of trust you need to build or the kind of opportunities that can then go down to the ground. If localizing SDGs is what we want, then those opportunities need to go right down to the ground. Second is the education. One is, of course, education, as you spoke about, the formal education, but also education in terms of life skills, right? And the kind of what you call it, experiential learning that is required. And sometimes I think the SDGs as this perfect canvas to teach children about life, and how that impact happens. So I think somewhere that is something that we ourselves believe in very strongly. In fact, I'm coming back, one of the other events which we had as part of Rise World Summit, which is a physical event, was about the Rise to Change program, and we just felicitated 60 students for what they had done, and etc. And it was just amazing listening to them. I couldn't believe they were fifth grade students. And the way they spoke so well about the SDGs and what they are doing and how they are working. So I think education in two forms. One is the formal education, which is required. Absolutely. Like you said, and aghast is the right word. You can't even believe that that could be in today's day and age. But also education in terms of life skill, because it's also a cross-cutting issue for the SDGs, right? Because if you don't understand the world around you, how are you even going to try and change it? So I think education around the SDGs is again a very critical part. Asha, I hope we still have you, because I was going to talk to you about climate change, because that's the other point. Yes, thank you very much. When we talk about climate change, NABARD definitely comes into the picture straight away, right? Maybe if that is something that you can, talk a little bit about NABARD's work in the greater scheme of how it is impacting climate change and how is it affecting, how is it tackling it, would be really great to understand. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Karan. So, as I was talking about sustainable livelihood, so we already have covered that human capital, social capital. So now comes that physical of also we touched upon. Now comes this natural capital. So this natural capital, before the climate change discussions become a part of our daily discussions, NABARD has been working for development of watersheds. This is a natural ecosystem restoration project. So through this project, the water tables, are actually restored. Water bodies are restored and water tables are improved upon. So this watershed development projects we have been doing for quite long. Then there are under this natural, capital, we also consider this projects we undertake with tribal people, tribal area, we undertake several projects with these tribal people, where we support these tribal people with developing a certain kind of sustained livelihood. Maybe some kind of orchard, a small orchard, then some processing, and then some other, livelihood techniques we try to impart them, and we try to see that they are actually better off with this, with these training and sustainable whatever, this asset is provided to them. So these are part and parcel of NABARD's journey since beginning. Recently, with this climate change thing came into our discussions, NABARD is the direct access entity under this adaptation fund. Then there is climate change. We have our own in-house climate change fund. We have that we are national implementing entity under National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change. Then there are other climate change funds. So my point here is we have been doing several projects like NFCC, that National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change. We are the national implementing entity for that. It's a Government of India established fund. Under that, I would like to mention just one project which we have done. We have done several, but one project which actually comes to my mind is one interventions we have done in Kutch in Gujarat. It was, mangrove restoration, like ecosystem restoration, we can call it, providing alternate livelihood. And, this training these people, they were mostly nomadic people, tribal people. So the condition of that area was really, really bad. So we started with mangrove restorations. We provided livelihood training to the women folk there, then men folk also, and we helped them to change an entire land mass into a grassland. In fact, this bunny grassland thing got mentioned by none other than our own Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. He mentioned in one of his Man Ki Baat, talk about this transformation of this area, which was almost desert area, has turned into a beautiful grassland. So, and this ensures fodder for the cattle there. So these kind of projects we have been doing. We are also doing several solar, irrigation projects. We apart from these solar projects, we have this as I was mentioning that we are a direct access entity and under adaptation fund. So we have been doing this projects with under these funds. So pan India, we have been doing several projects on adaptation as well as mitigation. So agriculture has to be climate smart. So agriculturist has to be told that what and how he can actually adapt himself with this changing, because you all must be knowing how this climate is now actually impacting our producers, that most the farmers are many areas the produce is going down. Then we have it's completely wiped out on several occasions. So basically, the challenge here is to help these people how they can mitigate the challenges, the ill effects, and how they can adapt to this new ecosystem. So several projects going pan India, and we are trying to help these people to be climate smart. So Karan.
Great. So climate smart, a good tag word for us to move ahead. Pooja, you have been working with, literally the marginalized. I mean, those are things that even the most largest, especially programs, do not tend to think too much. People who are completely, whether it is people with disability, whether it's LGBTQ, right? When you talk about climate smart, I think right now there is a real need for us to look and understand how they can even contribute. Because we always think of them as, unfortunately, I don't like to use the word beneficiary, but that's exactly how we tend to think of them, right? But the time has come for us all to be climate smart. And the more we bring everybody into that, so when you design skill programs, you design anything, can we design it being climate smart? Can we design it by talking about circularity? Can we design it by thinking about, how can we make sure that we are bringing them in so that they can also contribute in their bit, right? Because when you don't do something, like they say, like a dollar saved is $2 earned. It's similar to that, right? When anybody stops doing something that's wrong, you're actually saving a lot more. So how do you bring that in, perhaps in your programs, especially with marginalized? Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. We've done a bit of work, but although at very initial stages,
I
so
must say this, Pooja is too modest. Yeah, she always starts every line with, "We are just making new stuff." Please believe me, Pooja, you are a rarity, okay? And every bit matters, especially when that every bit is done with so much of intentionality and with good force. So please, go ahead, go ahead.
thank,
Yes.
thank you so much for that. Yeah, truly, every bit counts, but it's the beginning of a journey, long way to go. But whatever little we have done, quickly to talk about it. So, uh, you know, uh, Annie talked about it. I thought Annie talked about it, where she talked about creating champions out of school children, or maybe Asha talked about it. So we have been doing a project in Haryana primarily, where we are working with around 5,000 children and youth and doing awareness building with these youth around residue burning, which is a major issue in northern belt towards when the autumn season, winter season comes in, when that crop cutting happens. So again, you need to create those champions, and the idea is working with children and youth. They would be the role models. They'll talk to families, and we would be able to see that change. Similarly, we're doing something with the women artisans. This is something we're doing in Beerboom, where we are working with the women who are focusing on kantha stitching, very famous stitching pattern in West Bengal. Now, and we're also doing something there around banana fiber handicrafts. Now, in the banana fiber handicrafts, as well as in the kantha stitching, we are trying to make sure that the entire supply chain turns green. So the idea was to create the sustainable green enterprise out there. So in today's time, uh, you know, they have been using all these chemical-free natural dyes when it comes to the materials being used in that project, to talk a bit about it. Then there is something we tried to do in Uttarakhand where, we did a project in Chamoli district, which was about seed bombing. Now, again, Chamoli has seen, or for that matter, a lot of parts of India have seen deforestation majorly. So we took a particular part in Chamoli area where there was a massive deforestation, and through a seed bombing project wherein we released about 1.1 million seed balls in the area, we did try to sort of, see a green cover. We should be seeing couple of lakh native fruit trees coming up in that area and growing and getting bigger and better in couple of coming years. And very recently, we started doing some work around this in Sundarbans area around mangrove tree plantation primarily. So essentially, these are a couple of things from a climate smart perspective that we have been doing. And foundation, I think, if I have to look at it from a couple of perspectives, we are saying we need to build awareness. So there's a lot of focus on awareness with all the key stakeholders involved, because each of us have a role to be responsible, and having awareness helps to build that. Second is, once you have an awareness, act towards being a responsible citizen. So we have been talking about the action part as well broadly. I'll take a pause here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pooja. So, and those are really not small steps. Let me tell you, Pooja, I know of many, I mean, we do impact assessments of programs, right? And I know, how little are these thoughts, how little are these a part of those considerations set. One, sorry, neither the target groups that you're working with nor the kind of additionality that you're bringing into your program. So please, these are not at all small steps, and congratulations and all power to you. Yeah. I think we are literally now towards the end, and so I'm going to take. There is one very interesting question that has come up over here, which I'm going to leave it open to the entire, group to kind of maybe give in their points. What are the three steps? Oh, that's very specific, but never mind. What are the three steps that individuals, corporates, and government should do? And two things, wow, that's even more specific. Two things should stop doing, okay, to move the SDG agenda forward urgently. So either you can say it for yourself, for your sector or group, and say maybe we should stop doing this, or you can say maybe they should stop doing this. Whichever way you can, it can be a suggestion, it can be a self what you call it, planned item of activity. So anyone who wants to take up this question, happy to hear from you.
If you permit, I could just briefly talk
Absolutely,
about what to. So
go for it,
to that
go for it.
question, I think I will go with Honorable Prime Minister had launched with the Life campaign. It is lifestyle changes for environment and living. I think that summarizes and that gives that key direction to each of us as a citizen when we talk of SDGs or when we work on SDGs in a professional sphere. How does one integrate these kind of behavioral changes within ourselves, in our own homes, and within our children, and within our community, and within our entire, influence circle? So I think that is a good point to begin with. But again, to diverge from the individual to more of, as stakeholders in this entire country, this entire great country as we are moving towards Amritkal, I think the private sector needs to understand that it is not up to the government alone to provide, basic health, education, and employment and skilling. Because yes, as Annie was aghast at the sight of educational standards in UP Bihar, I also feel the same thing. I mean, the same agony crosses my mind when I visit schools, across some of these states. So that element, that government itself is alone responsible for providing quality services, whether it's the basic nutrition, health and education, and basic infrastructure across the rural and urban areas. I think that is where we are relying too much on a government system. And it is, we need to kind of, as citizens groups, as civil society groups, we need to bring in that amount of education amongst ourselves, that amount of awareness and vigilance also to demand that quality. I think that is where somewhere we are lacking. And this entire system of, too much of dependence on the governance, on the government systems. That's why Honorable Prime Minister had said, minimum governance with maximum governance, minimum government, maximum governance. So the role of the government has to be seen, and therefore the other actors, non-state actors, have to pitch in terms of their contribution. That's personally from my side. Over to you.
Maybe we take the same serial.
Right. Go ahead, Annie. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this partnership and collaboration is key at all levels. I can look at it from a panchayat level, where people come together, and to a district level where planning happens. And district collector is somebody whom, when we work at district level, we really look up to, and the district development officer and the district collector and all that. So there is the structure that we have, whether it is a panchayat or the district or at other levels. But I think there is very little space for collaboration. There is very little listening. You mentioned in between, like that respect and trust. That's so important. And somewhere, by our social structure, we do not interact with each other naturally. There is, and I feel sometimes the best ideas come out when the top and the bottom really interact. You know what is the ground situation, you know what is possible there, and that gap is hardly ever bridged, whether it is in an industry or whether it is in the government or between civil society and others. So I think somewhere greater listening to one another. Sanyukta was talking about listening exercise we had in the VNR. I think we really dragged them to every part of the country, made them listen to people. So I think that greater listening with respect and trust, knowing that the, agents of change are really located within these communities, and we can only support and strengthen that. I think that would really make a lot of difference. We can build that system, I would sort of say. And sometimes I think, we all are within our own bubble or within our own circle, all the time listening to each other only. We don't really, and every time I've listened to somebody outside my circle, that has really added value to think in a different way. So I think very consciously can we go beyond our circle, whether it's our social circle, economic circle, professional circle, whatever it is, can we very consciously take an effort to engage and collaborate with people beyond our circles. I think these would be two things. And the third thing I feel is India has a great potential for social enterprise. And social enterprise in every little thing. It's not like only productive social enterprise. Social enterprise with education. I think of the educated youth in this Bihar and UP, and I would feel that, a little training to them, they would become educators in the community, and they are the best educators possible. Can we start creating new ways of looking at social enterprise, and that human capital can be strengthened through the social gap. And I think we would go a long way strengthening the human capital that we always have with us.
Right. So I'm going to share three things. One is I don't remember where I heard this line or who said it. So please, it is definitely not mine. I'm not taking credit for some. But it was said that, I learn the most from the person who's least like me. And that's so true, right? But we don't normally go and do that. We always tend to go for someone who looks like us, who behaves like us, who talks like us, So I think that's something worth iterating, number one. Number two is actually the Rise World Summit has been created exactly with that understanding that we need all levels of people. We need all sectors coming here. We need all stakeholders. So it's not only the CEOs who will attend Rise World Summit. It's also the most junior. So we always say thought leaders, practitioners, experts, and learners, and then the spectrum in between. because you need to be able to interact with multiple people. And also, as they say, when one teaches, two learns, right? So I think it's very important for us to have this mix of people, so that we are learning from each other also constantly, right? And the last thing I want to share, at least from our perspective, is that we are actually launching something on Thursday, which will be the Pico World platform, which is exactly this: to not look at what is your background. Are you government? Are you corporate? Are you NGO? Are you? No, it's not important. What is important, and the pandemic taught us this, we didn't know who we were even working with half the time. What was their designation? Where did they come from? We just put out things saying we need help, and someone will respond. Why are you responding? Who are you? Nobody worried about that, right? So I think based on that experience, we are coming out with this, and I'm happy to, of course, talk about that offline with anyone who's interested in that, of course. But we are moving ahead, and yeah, the last point was about the wealth economy. I think more and more adopting the wealth economy concepts, looking beyond financial capital to social capital, to human capital, to natural capital, is the key for us to bridge this whole SDG financing gap. And how are we going to do that, right? So, because ultimately, if we don't achieve the SDGs, we are not going to have financial capital either, because there's nothing else that's going to be there for us, right? And as someone famously said, you can't eat money, can you? You can't, right? So we are going to need that kind of support for the SDGs. So, Isabel, before we close, maybe I will give you that chance to close it with saying maybe what you think are these, final issues that we should really be focused on if we are going to accelerate the SDGs, and also, of course, take it down to the community level so that it is localized and integrated into our lives and not just a theoretical concept. Yeah. So over to you, Isabel, please.
Thank you so much, Karan. Well, I was not prepared to close, and in no means this will be closing remarks, but sorry, I was actually, it was my connection. I was out for some time and I came back, yeah? So I might not have heard everything, but just since my colleague Kanta is not here, I think on gender, well, that is obviously specifically for India, but it goes also for other contexts. But the female labor force participation, I think that remains a challenge which we all need to address from all our different sides. So that is certainly an important one. And obviously there is a lot of work on this. And we just had a panel actually this morning on a network we are creating. But there's all this discussion on care economy and all that. But well, since we are today all women panel, I think it is very important, obviously, to look also at this societal and family structures. Yes, this is maybe not something we can change in 6 years, which we still have until 2030. I think in every society this takes time, but we have this Nobel Prize winner, Claudia Goldin. I think this quite an interesting what the research she is doing, right? In terms of how the societal norms as well have an impact on the economic outcomes. And that is something I think we need to work on. And I would like to bring in this term of, Kanta had a very interesting, I think, intervention. I just would like to add there the term of positive masculinity. This is not, I think that is really an element which I believe we need to work on close, because it is not men against women, but sometimes we end up a bit in this dichotomy, right? So I think if we can really think together, how can we work on this positive masculinity as just one but very important element. I believe all the incentives the state can bring in terms of care economy, that is important, but there is other elements I think we need to work on as well. So I wanted to mention that goes, I think, beyond the current SDG I think it would not be realistic if we say, well, in any society, I think that we can achieve, unfortunately, the SDG 5 by 2030, right? But there is, I think, society is gradually changing. That's the interesting part, right? There is always hope there. Obviously, we have, well, some countries where, there is also two step forward and one step back. We have that as well, and there are, even in our bigger Asia Pacific region, that is there. But I think in generally there is a progress there, and that is an important element which I just wanted to add to this discussion.
Sure.
Echoing also what Kanta said, and then just to echo also what I think Ani said on the social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. I think that is very important. That is really for India. I think that is an excellent. I don't want to say tool, but an excellent element on which we need to, and UNDP actually is working quite strongly on this. We are now working with partners on the social entrepreneurship hub. Yes, that is, I believe, also for the future, an important element. Obviously, bringing the youth in there, coming back to the circle which we discussed before on the youth. I stop with that. That is certainly not at all exhaustive, but just these two additional points. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Isabel. So I'm going to share one more thing that happened at the Rise World Summit just last night, okay? And that was India time for those who are not in the Indian zone right now. We had a round table for the first time ever, I was told, okay? We had women from the tri-services, women officials, okay, from the for the first time. All the services came together, Army, Navy, and the Air Force, all of them together, and they had this wonderful roundtable. I would definitely ask everyone to listen to the recording when they get a chance, because they really speak about what it is. And imagine, these are women from the armed forces. And if they are struggling in some ways and still, of course, beat the odds, then there is a story for all of us, right, to work on. And it was just incredible. I mean, I was just in awe of all those women. And I think the second was about the gender balance. Remember, I spoke about gender balance. The positive masculinity is kind of something what I mean in the gender balance, that who are we to decide what is masculine and what is feminine, right? There is a whole spectrum of behavior along that path. And so I think I agree with you. I mean, this sounds great, positive masculinity. And of course, as I said, gender balance. Maybe that's something we can, always explore more about. But we are come at the end of our time. We are almost, in fact, out of time. But at the same time, I want to really thank everyone. I think, each of us have brought in some such rich insights, because all of us speaking from experience, right? All of us are speaking from experience on the ground, from years of working together in multi-stakeholder kind of initiatives, multi-sectoral initiatives. And that's the diversity we need if we are going to achieve the SDGs, because the SDGs is not these 17 blocks. My favorite term is to say the SDGs look like these 17 blocks, but in reality, they are 17, woolen ball. If you take 17 colors and wrap them out, that's the kind of thing the SDGs are. They're all tightly wound up, right? Interlinked. So we need to keep that understanding there. And SDG education itself is very, very important at all levels, because I think people, while they know the SDGs or think they know the SDGs, really don't understand it from the target perspectives, right? And so the more we can evangelize the SDGs, the more we can advocate for it, hopefully the faster we will start bridging that gap to localize it, as well as, of course, accelerate it, because Agenda 2030 is just 6 years from now, and we need to do a lot to catch up. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you to UNDP for partnering with us on this roundtable, and we're looking forward to a lot more coming out of this. Thank you once again, and bye-bye. And thank you to all our participants for joining us at this thing.
Thank you. Three cheers to you for a wonderful moderation, keeping us all engaged on our feet. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Have a good evening all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.